And coming up on this week's show, we visit two of HS2's green tunnels and discuss whether they're a great idea or a huge waste of taxpayers' money. Reform says they'll cancel HS2 and leave the part-built project as a, quote, testament to British incompetence. Yeah, really. And the Midlands Rail Hub, full steam ahead, or perhaps not. Welcome to Green Signals from me, Nigel Harris, and...
from me, Richard Bowker.
We start this week with a film of a recent visit, we, by which I mean Richard, to HS2. Whatever your views on HS2 and whether it should continue in its current form, be cancelled, or even have the sections that Rishi Sunak, remember him, cancelled restored, there's no doubt that the engineering that is underway is dramatic and impressive, as we keep saying. One of the features on the line that's led to some controversies are the use of so-called green tunnels. There are 5 of them on HS2 and 3 use an innovative construction method involving precast concrete segments that are manufactured off-site, then transported to HS2 and put together, where they are then buried in a deep cutting to form the tunnels. 2 of them at Greatworth and Chipping Warden are very close to each other, so Richard and his son Charlie went to have a look for us.
Bombarded as we constantly are by the politics and the point scoring with regards to HS2, it is easy to forget sometimes that over 30,000 men and women are working extremely hard and with great skill to deliver something remarkable on the ground. It is impossible to ignore the politics, mind you. Richard Tyne, MP, the Deputy Leader of Reform, recently told the newspaper that Reform would scrap HS2 and leave unfinished infrastructure as a testament to British incompetence. Any reference to competence in a statement like that is an interesting one, since come the next election, the vast majority of the HS2 civil works will be complete, and so to say one is going to cauterise the project and leave it unfinished is as practically undeliverable an objective as it would be totally ridiculous and counterproductive to do. But it is vital that HS2 do keep up the pace and get better at what they're doing, and the good news is they are. We've come to Chipping Warden in Northamptonshire on a windy and extremely wet day to see progress on 2 tunnels that are proof positive that it is sometimes extremely difficult to decouple the politics from the practical engineering. The specific section we're visiting is the Greatworth to Southam, or G2S for short, part of the route. And it's the green tunnels of Chipping Warden and Greatworth that we've come to see specifically. Since we have to park at the site office at Chipping Warden, and it's a fair old distance between the 2 tunnels, we jump into a minibus for the ride to Greatworth. After the wonderful summer we have had, it's perhaps inevitable that the day of our visit is windy and wet. But even through the rain-spattered windows of the minibus, it is possible to get a sense of the scale of HS2. Although not the purpose of today's visit, we passed the 210-metre-long Lower Thorpe Viaduct, just south of the village of Thorpe Mandeville. The 1,300-tonne structure was built on site and then slid into position in just 3 days. We arrive at the cutting in which Greatworth Green Tunnel is being built, and it is impossible not to feel one's breath being taken slightly away. The sheer scale of this operation is just enormous. Not just the physical dimensions, but you can just see the logistics that goes in to bringing all the material to site and then ensuring that it is all put in place in the correct sequence. And obviously productivity is crucially important as well. But in terms of just the sheer scale, it's mind-blowing. The Greatworth Green Tunnel is one of 5 green tunnels along the HS2 Phase 1 route, and it's the longest one. It will stretch for 1.7 miles or 2.7 kilometres through West Northamptonshire. Instead of being built using a tunnel boring machine, or TBM, these green tunnels are built using the cut and cover method. A cutting is dug out, the tunnel is built at the bottom, and then earth is put back on top of the tunnel before being finished with trees, plants and shrubs, helping them blend into the natural landscape. Having seen the tunnel from above, it's time to jump back in the minibus and go and see the tunnel up close and personal. Along the way, we pass trucks loaded with precast segments for delivery to the tunnel portal. The blue building on the right is the tally hut, where we exchange photo ID for a small metal disc. Once we leave the tunnel and we're safely back, we will hand the tally disc in and have our ID returned. Driving into and through the tunnel, the sheer size becomes clear. It's important to remember, though, that it won't look quite like this when finished. First of all, there is blinding on the floor of the tunnel, which is a kind of bottom layer or base. Then on top of that, there is laid an invert slab, cast in situ, upon which the railway track will then be laid. So that will raise the floor level of the tunnel somewhat, but even so, it's still going to be quite the structure when finished. HS2 say that they have applied lessons from the construction of the latest French high-speed lines. Designed as an M-shaped double arch, the tunnel will have two separate halves, one for southbound, one for northbound trains, each one the height of two double-decker buses. Instead of casting the whole tunnel on site, 5 separate concrete precast segments are slotted together to achieve the double arch, one central pier, 2 side walls and 2 roof slabs. All 5,020 segments are steel reinforced, with the largest weighing up to 43 tons. We watch the complex procedure of lifting one of the precast segments off the trailer on which it has been delivered. These segments have all come from Stanton in Derbyshire at a specialist precast facility there. Productivity is critical. The tunnel build can only move at the pace of the slowest part of the process. So the team have spent a great deal of time and effort working out how to deliver every part of the process as quickly as possible and as effectively as possible without compromising safety at any point. Of course, what everyone wants to do is look inside the tunnel itself. Only then does the true scale of this structure become apparent.
Well, we're here inside the tunnel at Greatworth. There's an extraordinary amount of noise for obvious reasons. There's a lot of work going on, but absolutely extraordinary in terms of the scale of this. Just the size of it, it's genuinely cavernous.
Waterproofing is an essential part of the process. It's fascinating to see that looking into the tunnel where the waterproofing has been completed, it is bone dry. Whereas looking back towards the tunnel mouth, and especially on a day such as this, it is clear that waterproofing has not yet been completed. We watch as the team work on installing the invert slab on one side of the tunnel. Chris Barrett is Senior Agent for contractor EKFB on the G2S segment, and the man responsible for project managing the building of the tunnels.
Chris, this is called a green tunnel. Just explain it. Why that name?
So green tunnel pretty much emphasises that it's a cut and cover. So we dig out the cut, the earthworks we move in, and then it's precast units. Been precast off-site, so it takes away all of the activities on the job up in Derby, and then they transport it down to us on the back of low loaders, and then we install the units as we go along.
What we're actually stood on, the base, though, you cast that in situ here, do you?
Yes, 100%. So the in situ part here, the earthworks complete the trim, we then move in, we lay a waterproofing layer underneath, and then the concrete that's standing on now is cast in situ concrete with reinforcement.
And I've just noticed, so the section we're stood in, the water is still coming down the walls, but inside it's as dry as anything. So presumably there's a layer of waterproofing that's going on as well.
So on the extras of the tunnel, once we've completed the blind and we put the units in, we then lay a waterproof membrane around the extras, and that membrane stops the water from coming through and makes the tunnel itself water resilient. So like you said, as you look behind you, inside the tunnel, completely waterproof, it's dry. Outside here where it isn't waterproofed, we've got the water coming through.
I just can't get over the scale of it.
Yeah. When you come down here and you see it, and the height of the tunnel is about 10 metres, it's huge. When you see pictures of it, it doesn't really do it justice.
It doesn't.
So, you've got a 160-ton crane outside there. When you see a picture, you just think, oh, it's just a normal crane. But you come down, you see the scale of it, you see the size of the invert, you see the size of the units. We've got a gantry behind us that's installing the membrane, that's 30 metres wide. It's huge.
Absolutely amazing. Well, listen, it's so impressive. The one thing that I hadn't realised, it's on a curve.
Yes, it's on a radius. Yeah,
Right.
So in terms of the radius, our surveyors on this job, we have one lead surveyor, he's fantastic. is very much in tune with how we manage the radius going right the way around. So you notice all the units are square, so we have to make sure we manage the gaps between the units. So we've got between 5mm and 25mm. So we're landing them each time. We just got to have a bit of a creep there to marry up with the radius of the tunnel.
I love that. As if it wasn't hard enough, he said, "Oh, we'll build it on the bend." What's been the biggest challenge of building this here? Because these are extraordinarily long, and this is about 2.5 kilometres, isn't it?
Yes.
When it's completed.
Yes, this tunnel is 2.7 kilometres. Challenge-wise, you kind of have to look at the tunnel as if it's a production factory. So rather than looking at it piece by piece, you look at it all together, and you take all the elements, bring them together, and understand how they all work. So, for instance, initially, we had some major problems of how we deliver the concrete for the invert slab behind us. So we looked at it, took a step back, and we realised that the concrete should be delivered from the entrance of the tunnel, not trying to bring it in through the face of the tunnel where we're doing the install. And then, for instance, as well, the invert slabs, initially all in situ. We did some offline trials using a mock tunnel. So we put a mock tunnel to the side of this permanent works. We did trials inside there with prefab reinforcement rather than in situ reinforcement for the invert slab, and we realised that there was an opportunity there to increase the production rate on the inverts, and that's increased greatly now, taking it from about 4 meters a day to 8 meters a day.
And so I suppose there isn't really a manual that says this is how you build a green tunnel in the UK. So how much of this have you had to sort of learn as you've gone there?
I think the big thing for me personally is working on tunnel jobs previously. So where I've worked on traditional tunnels before, you have to take a step back and treat this almost as if it is a traditional tunnel and look at it like the crane's almost a TBM installing the units, and then behind you then you have the invert slabs going in, and you just have to look at each activity and treat it as though we do in traditional tunneling.
And now I understand you're actually slightly ahead of your programme, aren't you? So the productivity improvements in the last 12 months have been extraordinary.
It has been quite substantial. So in terms of our unit installation, we're average around 7 or 8 per day in the summertime at the moment, which is quite up from last year. Invert slabs, like I mentioned, they double the output. Waterproofing, we've gone from less than 10 meters a day to about 25 meters a day at the moment. So we're taking a lot of lessons learned. We've improved in a lot of areas. We've put people in the right places, looked at the parts of the design that need changing, looked at the sequence of the works to make sure we've got the most efficient way of building the tunnel, and the product this year has been quite amazing.
Well, it's absolutely brilliant. Well done.
Thank you very much.
Since there is so much still to see, it's time to leave. But we get the chance to travel back through the tunnel and see at close quarters the scale and precision of the engineering involved. The ramp here is so that the minibus can run along the top of a section of invert slab that's been completed. And we do get a sense of just how thick that invert slab is. One of the advantages of this kind of construction is that it does avoid having to remove vast quantities of spoil from the site. The G2S section of route involves some 12.4 million cubic metres of excavation. By way of comparison, the volume of the vast Wembley Stadium is just 4 million cubic metres. Once the green tunnels have been constructed, much of what has been excavated will be put back on top as fill, thus removing the need to transport the spoil away from the site and along congested roads in the area with all the thousands of lorry movements that would entail. The weather, if anything, has deteriorated whilst we were in the tunnel, so having returned our tally discs, we head back along the access road network, passing an extraordinary range of vehicles along the way, including this one that has delivered a beam for one of the viaducts under construction. And soon we pass the 515 metres Edgecote Viaduct, which when complete will carry the railway across the floodplain of the River Cherwell south of Chipping Warden. Each of the 40 piers we can see weigh around 70 tonnes and are precision manufactured off-site by precast specialist Pacadar in Kent. The viaduct's final design features just 2 beams per span, and this streamlined approach not only accelerates construction, but has reduced the carbon footprint of the structure as well. We soon arrive at the porous portal of Chipping Warden Green Tunnel. It's designated a porous portal because the tunnel widens as it comes towards its opening. The holes we can see in the precast segments, along with the fact that the tunnel does gradually widen, reduces the noise and air pressure effect of high-speed trains entering and leaving the tunnel. As we watch segments being placed into position, I have a chance to chat with Alexi Bond, EKFB Project Director for the G2S section of HS2. Alexi, so you're Project Director for G2S. Just explain what that is and just give us a sense of the scale of this.
So G2S is Great Worth to Southam, which is about 25 kilometres of the mainline trace. In the magic numbers, we've got 7 viaducts, a number of overbridges and underbridges, 55 kilometres of drainage to deliver, and over 14 million cubic metres of excavations complete. And we see at the moment about 2,000 people through the gate every day working on the sites across G2S.
And one of the things you were explaining before was that Wembley Stadium is about 4 million cubic metres, isn't it? So that's 3.5 Wembley Stadiums worth of fill. I mean, that's an extraordinary amount of earthworks. Is it right that this is actually fundamentally a massive earthworks project?
100%. We are a long section where we're trying to create a reasonably flat railway to make the train as fast as possible. And that means moving hills and filling in valleys. So we are really governed by delivering the earthworks, and that means we need to move roads onto bridges. So we need to finish the bridges as soon as we can to release the area where the road was to allow us to dig that work out. So even tunnels like this is all about getting the earthworks done. So we dig the cutting to build the tunnel, and then we need to go back and fill that material on top of the tunnel. And that's the key driver for our programme.
Nothing on this project is small scale, but then neither should it be. This is serious engineering for a serious purpose. Don't be fooled by the chatter. The Chinese, the French and the Spanish would not undertake the engineering of this railway any differently. And as we learned on this trip, much of what is being done on HS2 is being informed by lessons learned in France in particular. Yet it's not without controversy. Cuttings might have been cheaper here, but there would have been consequences of that approach in terms of habitat impact and vehicle movements, many thousands of vehicle movements. And those things can't be ignored. They have to be considered and tough decisions taken. That is the nature of major infrastructure investment in a democratic society, where so many groups have different and legitimate opinions. Phase 1 of HS2 will not get cancelled now. It's nonsense to suggest that it should. Having said that, lessons must and will be learned. That too is essential. But sometimes, and even on a day when the weather is as grim as it was on this visit, it is important just to stand back and marvel at the ingenuity, the skill, the professionalism and the sheer hard work of so many brilliant men and women. Like those who built the Elizabeth line in London and who were constantly berated at the time but are now lauded as visionaries and world leaders, so too in time will be those who have built HS2, whatever point-scoring politicians choose to indulge in along the way. I'm left in no doubt as to who I think the real heroes are.
Where do I start? As you say, it's really impressive, but slightly tongue-in-cheek. I was delighted that we got double-decker buses and Wembley Stadium in that one. I was just waiting for an Olympic-sized swimming pool, but sadly it never came along. Although it did, it fell on your head, didn't it?
Oh, it did. Yes, it was damp. It was very damp.
Just occurred to me as I said it. But bloody impressive. What, as we keep saying, whatever else you think, watching doing a simple thing for it might be a simple thing, but clearly isn't. Just very gently upending one of those side pieces that they got off the back of that lorry before swinging it into place.
But even that process has been refined and thought through to get it as quick and as effective whilst still as safe as possible. And one of the things that I was really impressed by was the effort that's gone into productivity. They are now building these things far better, not far better, but certainly far faster than they were at the start. Learning curve.
He made
Yeah.
one point, didn't he, about one process that they'd refine, which meant they'd got 8 meters a day instead of 4, which doesn't sound much, but over a period is a lot. However,
It's twice as fast, isn't it?
well, yes, it is. However, I've never been a fan of green tunnels. I remember when all the arguments were about them, and they just feel to me, whatever they might say about ecology and everything else, they were done to buy off the opposition from the Chiltern NIMBYs to get the thing through, and that they are a waste of money. I'm not a fan. However well they put together. Full stop. Discuss as the best A level questions used to say.
It's a point of view, right? I mean, some of the arguments in favour of them. I mean, there are some very relevant ones as well, some very practical ones. Okay, so I mean, the ecology and habitat and species protection. I think we diminish ourselves as a society if we go, just stuff doesn't matter, just build the thing, right?
But it'd work on a slope of a cutting as well as a flat top. Come on, Richard.
Well, okay, but you can't ignore.
I didn't say ignore
stuff,
it.
Right? No, I didn't say, and I didn't say you were ignoring it, right? But I think there is a kind of almost a bit of a movement. When you hear the Chancellor almost making fun of the fact that anybody's worried about bats, for instance, that. And I'm sure she didn't mean it, but the comments
how it came across,
taken slightly out of context. I think that sets an example. It sets a tone. It's all about leadership. So I think habitat and species is important, but you may be right. There may be other ways of doing it. I think the practical issue is actually very relevant. So, they've taken, in building that cutting, they've taken, back to your Wembley Stadium point, right? They've dug out 12, 13 million cubic meters of stuff, of spoil. That's got to go somewhere. And I suppose the benefit of a green tunnel is you can put it back on top of it. And that avoids literally thousands of vehicle movements in an area that really can't arguably cope with it.
Point taken, but you could have taken it out by train in another world, but not yet.
Maybe, but that's not as straightforward as it sounds, because from where? You've then got to build this is in a place where there is no railway, right? So that is not as straightforward as it sounds. It's not an urban environment.
Even the Great Central in 1899 built little contractors' railway up and down there.
Come on, well, you quite possibly. I don't.
The Channel Tunnel did the same.
All right, but those cuttings, had they left them just as cuttings, they wouldn't have been able to have as steep sides as they do. They can get away with the steep sides because they're temporary. So if they'd had shallower sides, they would have been more spoil, clearly. And they could have not had as deep a cutting as before. I mean, probably around 2011, 2012, when all the consultation was going on, the railway did get sort of deeper into the landscape, if I can put it that way. And had it not done that, then some of the bridges and viaducts would have been far bigger things to cope with the fact that the railway was more elevated. I'm not arguing that the green tunnels per se are the only solution, but there are pros and cons of them doing it the way they did.
There always are, and I grant you that. And I must admit, I hadn't really thought too much about the spoil question, so I'm being the all-round reasonable chap on such objective arguments. I'm prepared to accept that one. But
goodness me, that's a collector's item. I'm having that one. Right?
On the wider scale of things, there was some pictures of them appeared on Twitter a while ago from the air. And, so you dig a hole, you put a concrete tunnel in it, and you fill it in again. The general response was, why? And we've been answering that. I'm not seeking to rerun the argument. But in a world where one of the things that HS2 is beaten over the head with more than anything on cost, it has not helped.
And the question I always have is the fact that they did it that way not helped? Or is it the fact that it's not been communicated as well as it might have been? And that's not just, I don't think that's down just to HS2. I think their comms team, we've said this before, say it again, the comms team, I think, are absolutely excellent when it comes to explaining these things and allowing people like us to go and look at them. And
they've treated us very
them.
well indeed.
They've not been helped by government generally who've sort of used it as a bit of a political football when it suits them. That definitely does.
And for years, under various regimes of management, when I was a national journalist, people inside said, look, we would love to say more, but the DfT just say, keep quiet, we don't want you saying anything. So they weren't allowed to.
Which is just an absolute colossal error. So look, I do take your point. I mean, there is an argument that says that we over-consult in this country. We are too willing to compromise so that everybody is happy, which you can never do.
So it's where on the sliding scale?
And it's where on the sliding scale. Now, that's for another project. For this project, they've done them.
Yeah.
And what they've done is amazing, and they've learned from the process, and they're actually now really good at it, and you can see the unit cost and the time coming down, which is tremendous.
And let me close with that point, because yes, they've done it well, and to hear that chap that you interviewed talking about the way they've refined it and got it better and improved it, because people all too often say, and we never learn in this country. Well, actually, yes, we do. And there's a classic case on it. Okay. I think that's about it for now on that one.
It's quite a balanced outcome, that, actually, for us.
So. Yeah, and we got Wembley, and we got double-decker buses, and you got rained on by an Olympic-sized swimming pool. So
indeed,
all three boxes well and truly ticked. And thanks to Charlie for going along as your cameraman. Nice camera work, Richard.
Yeah, a bit better, actually, unfortunately. That's slight downside of that. But there you go. Good.
It's those rowing arms, you see, all the camera steady out in front of you. That's what it is, isn't it? Anyway, look, while we're on the subject of HS2, an extraordinary report has been published that needs to be mentioned, albeit I use the word extraordinary advisedly. If there's a thinks bubble here, you wouldn't see the word extraordinary in it. The report to which I refer is by Think Tank Policy Exchange and has been authored by Andrew Gilligan, former advisor to Rishi Sunak, and one of the people Sunak listened closely to, we are told, before making the decision to cancel phase 2 of HS2. Mr. Gilligan appears to have hitched his pony to a different political philosophy these days, because the foreword to this report is by Deputy Leader of Reform, Richard Tyne MP. Richard, you've had the delights of reading this in detail. What do you think?
Well, and there's a lot of detail. It's 50-odd pages, so I'm not suggesting for a second that I've absorbed everything yet. We'll come back to that.
And presumably we can put on the website a link so people can download it.
No, absolutely. People should read it, and form their own view, right? Not just listen to people like us or the many people that have offered their insight on social media. I mean, look, first, the obvious point, and Andrew Gilligan is a high-speed rail denier. He doesn't believe in it, and
never has.
He's spent quite a lot of time and effort building up the arguments he uses in support of his rejection of it. And so nothing in this report, in that sense, is going to come as a major surprise. There's lots of dramatic claims. He does write in this rather uncompromising style. This is the truth, and if you don't believe it, well, that's your problem, sort of stuff. And so when he's talking about HS2, I mean, I just picked out a couple. He talks about HS2 Lite, which was the thing that Andy Burnham and Andy Street sort of co-sponsored. He says HS2 Lite is a trap, which would cost little, if at all less, than the original scheme. It would also, remarkably, make services between London, Birmingham, and almost 20 cities and towns further north worse than they are now, right? So just hold these thoughts, right? And then he says, if the West Coast main line between the Northwest, the Midlands and London is overloaded, though in years of asking, no one has ever provided evidence that it is. What he means to say is no one has ever convinced me, not that they've not provided evidence, right? They're different things, Andrew. He then says, the Mayor's report claims that running 400-metre trains will only be possible on the dedicated high-speed track between London and Birmingham, and that beyond Birmingham to the northwest, the West Coast main line infrastructure is only able to accommodate 200-metre trains with 500 seats. And then he says, this is not true, okay? 400-metre trains could also be run via the West Coast main line to Manchester Piccadilly if the new platforms planned there under the HS2 scheme were still built. So when you listen to all of that, there is a group of people that go, oh, there you go, that's pretty obvious, it was mad. The problem is, most of that is just reheated old stuff. There's nothing really new or of any interest from stuff he's said before. and frankly, most of those things, in fact, all of those things have perfectly plausible rebuttals. And he does have this continual misunderstanding between how many services you can run between, say, London and Manchester or London and Birmingham, and then how you manage and path and organise complex junctions on the railway, which are seeing lots and lots of train movements that are in addition to all of those, right? And he kind of constantly does that. He also has obviously found somebody who believes that it's a dead simple thing to shove a grade separated junction in at Colwich or a brand new tunnel in at Shugborough, both of which are actually highly, highly problematic, but they're almost just dismissed as, just get on with it and do it. So it is a curious report from that point, and an awful lot of the HS2 stuff will not come across as new to anybody.
Because he just blithely, excuse me, he just blithely says we're going to 4-track from Colwich. No, well, you can't, can you, through the tunnel and the river and everything else? It's
well, the LNWR, the London North Western Railway, had issues with it in the 1880s,
and nobody solved it since.
And it's been problematic since. It's not to say that this is 2025 now. There's lots of things we can do. It's not to say it cannot be done, right? But to just suggest it's just a simple task, no, that is not correct.
All right, but this report is also really, in essence, isn't it, about dumping on Northern Powerhouse Rail, and that's where it gets interesting, doesn't it? Because he seems to be promoting an Elizabeth line concept for the north. I wasn't totally clear about that. Is it just NPR with a different label or something entirely new, Richard?
Well, this is where it gets really interesting, I think. So most of the leaders of the North, let's call it that, and I mean political leaders like mayors and so on, or administrative ones, working for local authorities and so on, or even business lobbyists like the Northern Powerhouse Partnership, right? They seem to argue that the North would work better if it was treated by like something called, you've seen this word before, megatropolis. It's
word.
Basically, it is an awful word, but it's this kind of notion that entire arc from Liverpool and Manchester and over to Leeds and I suppose Sheffield and York and Hull, whatever, that whole arc will work better in an agglomerated form, as economists call it, if it's treated and allowed to function almost as like one super region. Okay. And Gilligan argues that that's flawed thinking, right? That's flawed logic. He cites some quite interesting examples, actually. He's got the Rhine-Ruhr region in Germany, or there's the Randstad region, I think that's in Holland, isn't it? Where he says that they don't function. There are actually lots of similarities in those to the north, right? But the ones, the examples you use, they don't function like a single region. They're very well connected, interconnected, but they're distinct and they function distinctly. Okay. He says agglomeration occurs within a city region, not over such a wide arc. And he argues that Manchester, its growth was very strong when the Metrolink, which is the tram network that connects, the sort of sub-regions of Manchester, was being expanded. And it's kind of slowed in terms of growth since that expansion has stalled, right? Now, I don't know if he's right about that, Nigel. I have not looked at the numbers, but he does argue that we should focus on growing integrated travel, bus, and cycle, active travel, all that kind of stuff within a region. Because he says Manchester, very, very different to West Yorkshire, and trying to pretend they're one or can become one is flawed. And so where it gets interesting, he says, by extension, so look, Transpennine route upgrade, which we're spending, thick end of 11 billion on, he says that's going to be perfectly adequate for Transpennine rail, really. You don't need to then spend yet more billions on another high-speed line between Manchester and Leeds, given that we're not trying to create this megatropolis, right? What you'll have is good. And do you know, I think on that, he has a point, right? And
there's certainly something to be discussed there, isn't there?
Well, I think that's it. I think that is worthy of not just being discounted, right? I've always been slightly nervous about that. I mean, the Rhine-Ruhr region has got one big difference between sort of Lancashire and Yorkshire. There isn't a blooming great mountain range in between the two, right? So these are really important points. Now, the problem is the report then gets confused, I think, in other places. So in one place, he decides tunnels as ruinously expensive, effectively. That's my word, ruinously, but that's the theme that when he's talking about NPR and HS2 using the section, from the airport to Piccadilly.
Yeah.
And then he promotes the notion of this new east-west Elizabeth line style thing under Manchester with maybe four platforms in an underground station.
It's okay then, yeah.
It becomes okay then. And I think the cost of what he describes is actually going to be more than he says. He doesn't perhaps realise that the systems integration costs of that are going to be very, very significant, right? And it's going to be a lot more disruptive than I think he thinks it is. Where he really blows it is, in my view, is when he, I think, uses examples of sort of single point examples and tries to extrapolate them across a whole thing. So I'll give you one example of that, right? He makes this claim. He says, in the 2025 timetable, i.e. the one we've got today, trains on the existing direct, electrified and upgraded route, he's making the point between Liverpool and Manchester, right? The Chat Moss line, which goes through Newtonley Willows, are timetabled to do the trip in 34 minutes, including a stop at Lee Green en route. Now, when you look at that, in the current timetable, I believe that 34 minutes is achieved once, maybe twice. But the typical time is 41 minutes, once per hour. And other trains take 50 minutes or longer, right? Now, Northern Powerhouse Rail, I think, would be 4 per hour. And I've no doubt his Elizabeth line concept could be something similar. But this is where he gets really frustrating, Nigel, because he takes one fact that is true in isolation, almost like once, twice a day, and then extrapolates it in a way that just, I feel as if he's just ended up distorting it beyond any real usefulness. And I think it kind of almost like undermines everything, really, because it's not the big picture when you actually understand the big picture.
People did it with East Coast Main Line, didn't they? They said, BR used to go to Edinburgh from King's Cross in 4 hours, but wasn't it just once a day?
I think it was just once.
So you couldn't extrapolate that. So we could do it all day. Well, of course you couldn't. Anyway, it's the forward to his report by Reform's Richard Tyne. To say it raised further eyebrows, mine were up around the back of my head, I think, contained this extraordinary line. To anyone tempted to bid for the Liverpool to Manchester high-speed scheme or the revised northern leg of HS2, I give this warning, do not bother. A Reform government will spend the money instead on things the country needs more. Now, that's quite something to read in a report by an independent, non-partisan, educational charity, which is what Policy Exchange insists it is. Not only that, but alongside this report, there was a remarkable interview by Richard Tyne with the I newspaper, published September 12th, if you want to look it up, in which he said, or claimed, inter alia, as they say, Reform has oven-ready projects around the country that haven't happened because they've been gobbled up by the HS2 budget. Referring to HS2, he said, cut the loss, cauterise it and invest that money. You can short-term help the Chancellor with her needs and then deploy new railway lines, commuter lines in the north. And when asked what he would do with the infrastructure that is already being built, he said he would, now wait for this, fill the tunnels at either end and leave the bridge there as a testament to British incompetence and negligence in managing large-scale infrastructure projects. Hang on, what's that? Oh, there's one flying over the cuckoo's nest, I think.
I mean, that last comment, I think is, this is my opinion, right? But I think that's sort of borderline unhinged, if that's what he really does believe.
I'd just take the borderline out of that.
And just be very clear, he was talking about oven-ready projects. He did actually say oven-ready rail projects, right? But I mean, heaven knows what they are, right? If he's referring to what was in the Network North document, because there's a big thing in this about what you need to do is lots and lots and lots of little interventions.
Which was Sunak's case.
Well, it was just a hodgepodge of tripe, wasn't it, really, that Network North thing?
Yes.
And, of a lot of the stuff that was in there, the one whatever they are, the one thing they're probably not is oven ready, right? I just don't understand, but maybe somebody else smarter can explain why Policy Exchange, who are a think tank and there is sort of academic underpinning to these reports, have asked somebody who's clearly got very little detailed grasp of how railways work or what their role is or what the policy is needed to develop them to write a forward to a report like this. It just seems incongruous, really, but there you go.
Could it have anything to do with the fact that Reform are something like 14 points ahead in the opinion polls and being sort of lauded as the next government with Farage as a prime minister?
It is possible. I wouldn't. I don't do politics, right? So so that's possible. But when you read the Policy Exchange report, the problem is it kind of reads a bit more like a political manifesto.
It does.
Than it does an academic paper. And I come back to what I said earlier. There are some things in it that I think are worthy of detailed discussion. There's just an awful lot of stuff surrounding it.
All right. Well, look, because of other things we've been working on this week, we've not had the sufficient opportunity to do our classic deep dive into all this, but we shall do so for next week, and we'll do our best to get people along who really do know what they're talking about to inform the discussion. So watch this space, and we'll bring you more on this story then.
Now, Nigel,
That's me, and I'm listening.
One of the big changes that's taken place in Network Rail under Andrew Haynes' leadership is, of course, greater devolution to the regions, something that will be very helpful when it comes to aligning infrastructure with train operations, in due course under Great British Railways. And as a result of that, Network Rail's now got 5 regional managing directors, very senior individuals indeed. They report directly to Andrew Haynes. One of them, the regional managing director for the enormous Eastern region, is industry leader Ellie Burrows. Now, I met up with Ellie recently at an extraordinarily windy Bedford to chat about her role, what it entails, and some of the more challenging issues facing her and her team. Here's a sneak preview. You've mentioned quite a few times collaboration and working in partnership with the train companies. Talked about the East Coast timetable. I know that you worked very closely with Steve White on South East and almost you had an alliance going before anybody really thought of alliances. Do you think that GBR, Great British Railways, offers something in addition to that? Or because the way you're describing this is almost like, well, we're kind of getting on and doing it anyway.
So I do think that we've got a huge opportunity to work together far more than historically that we have done. So I was really privileged to work closely with Steve in South Eastern. You're absolutely right. And I've had the privilege of working really closely with another number of train operators across the network. There are definitely things that we can do just in partnership by being more open with each other, by trusting each other, by sharing information and just understanding each other's levers. And we've had huge success in that. Working with Jamie Bowles when I was in the route director for Anglia, I think we worked really, really well together and delivered real performance improvement by just better understanding each other's organisations and pulling our organisations together with really clear common goals. I do think GBR is going to bring us an opportunity, though, to just look at where some of those incentives still remain a little bit misaligned, and where even now we have performance targets in some operators in Network Rail that aren't the same number, and that can't be right, can it? We should be aiming for the same goals, and we should be looking at some of those things that historically have meant that we're pushing more in other slightly different areas from each other, and getting that all into one place has to have its opportunity. So I'm really excited by that. I don't think we need to wait for it. I do think we've got really strong relationships that we can keep on building on, but the more we remove those misaligned targets and incentives, the more opportunity I think we have.
Yeah, I completely agree with that.
Excellent stuff, Richard. She was extremely refreshing, and if GBR ever gets going, maybe a candidate for CEO, who knows? So more of that, please. Very much looking forward to the full interview, which we will publish next week at midday on Tuesday, September the 23rd. Okay, moving on to the Midlands, and a report published by Midlands Connect on September the 12th claims that Quote, towns and cities along the Midlands Rail Hub route could see a boost of £14 billion every single year by closing the productivity gap with the rest of England. The Midlands Rail Hub proposes building 2 cords as well as 10 plus engineering interventions throughout the region, allowing up to 20 million extra seats for passengers and up to 300 extra trains every day through the Midlands and beyond. The West Chord consists of improvements between Bordesley and Moor Street, allowing access to Birmingham Moor Street from the southwest and Wales, and making sure services are improved on the Hereford and Worcester corridors. The East Chord also creates access into Moor Street from the East Midlands. So, full steam ahead, Richard, or not?
Well, this is the weirdest project in so many ways, Nigel. In the same press release that you've just quoted from, Maria Machankoses, who's the CEO of Midlands Connect, says this. She says, the government investment to improve the Midlands and beyond connectivity through the Midlands Rail Hub is an investment in unlocking its people, its productivity and its economy. Then she says, the plans and the potential are in place. Now we need to make it happen. So you think, okay, as you say, off we go, do everything. So the problem is we've been here before. And on the 2nd of September, we asked Midlands Connect to confirm what of their total project scope was funded. And they said, and I kid you not, please speak to the DFT.
We didn't. Yeah.
So we did. Exactly, so we did. And they said, and this is brilliant, right? The Midlands Rail Hub will be transformational for economic growth, jobs and homes. That's our favourite phrase. In the region, and with 123 million already released to Network Rail, we're forging ahead with our promise to create the modern transport system Britain needs and deserves, right? Which is a lovely quote, but absolutely nothing to do with the question we asked, really. Now, we know that the total cost of Midlands Rail Hub is estimated to be around 1.75 billion. We know that because there was a press release recently that kind of indicated that was the sort of the working envelope. We know that DFT have released 123 million to Network Rail. And we also know that the government have provided some funding in the spending review for the next stage, presumably beyond 123 million, but not as far as 1.75 billion, right? But nobody appears to actually want to confirm what that number now is. So I understand from very credible sources quite close to this that following the decoupling, the East Midlands bit has kind of been rephased, which has caused a lot of angst over there. So we're really focused on the West. So we're certainly not talking about 1.75. And the informed view seems to be probably somewhere around $1 billion, which kind of makes sense. But if that's the case, why don't you just say it? Why don't you just actually say and take the plaudits for it? I do not understand this unwillingness to say what is committed, unless they're really worried about the reaction when people hear the number. I don't know. We did ask the DFT at the time to confirm it. They said, unfortunately, I can't confirm the exact amount, but if that changes, I'll let you know.
Oh, for God's sake.
Okay, so there you go. So
am I allowed to say that the acronym FFS is line dancing through my mind right now?
I just don't understand it. Now, some people say they know, and some people say they've got, we know how much. Just say it, right?
But they wonder why we all despair. It's not that long ago. I think we had the same response from Network Rail. Oh, you'll have to go and ask the DFT. And we got the same dusty answer.
Yeah, but you'd think that somebody, I don't understand why they just won't say it, but maybe we're missing something. So who knows? There you go.
We clearly are. What do we know? Now, if there's one subject that is perhaps more misunderstood than any other, it's the price of rail tickets. Who decides how much they are? And how much of the total cost of the railway do they actually pay for? Then there's the oft-repeated view that they're more expensive than anywhere else in Europe. It's all gone wrong since privatisation, and they used to be much cheaper in days gone by. But are they? And has it? And were they? In a bid to demystify the price of train tickets, Stef and Richard have produced one of their popular little explainer videos, short and to the point, and it is brilliant. Here are 10 reasons why train tickets are so expensive in this video. And here's a teaser.
Number 3. Who controls fares? Around 45% of fares are regulated. That means that rail companies can't just charge what they want. Any annual increases are restricted and usually linked to changes in the Retail Prices Index, plus or minus a certain number of percentage points. Since 1993 and the passing of the Railways Act at the time of privatisation, it is the government who makes the decision on how much regulated fares may rise by. Many people think it has been private companies making this decision, but it has not. Since 2020 and the pandemic, all fares have been controlled by the government, not just the regulated ones. So the level of rail fares has always largely been a political decision, and now it is a totally political decision.
Well, I hope people enjoy that. It is worth a little watch. It was great fun to do. We've published the full video now, the full thing. And as you say, Nigel, it's just a little over 10 minutes long. We published it early this week. Hopefully it helps bust some of the myths around this understandably controversial subject.
And it would be wrong not to draw attention to and salute Stef's magnificent animations in it.
Yeah, they're all Stef's. They're brilliant. They're really
superb. Good. It really helps to entertain as well as really explain stuff that can be very dry and difficult to get across, can't it? So absolutely superb. I think he's going to be an Oscar winner, that. And now it's time to thank everyone who supports us. First of all, thanks to RIA, the Railway Industries Association, our programme supporter, and Rail Business Daily, our media supporter. And now our usual huge thank you to everyone who's left us a super thanks on YouTube this week, and they really do help. So to start off with Thor Eagle Julstad. Good to get that one out of the way, and I hope, Thor, I got it not too badly wrong. Alan Kirkman, John Kirkman, the Independent Brigline Rail Group, Caroline Cleveley, Andrew Seddon, Rob, Staffordian, Howard Jones, Graham Whitley, Alistair Rutledge, Bob Walsh, Nigel Mapston, Chris Exley, Marion Bloom, Russell Coles. And again, thanks so much to all of you. It really wouldn't exist without the generous support of our listeners and viewers. So thanks very much indeed from all three of us. We really do appreciate it.
We do indeed. And thanks also to our new gold member, who is 47576. I presume that's 47576, Kings Lynn. We'll publish a list of all our members, whether they're bronze, silver or gold, and our supporters in the end credits of the show. Becoming a member does make a huge difference to us, allows us to do loads and loads of great stuff, and you do get some exclusive content and goodies if you are a member. So if you're a fan of Green Signals, you want to support us, please click the join link on YouTube if you're watching on there, or there's a link to our Patreon page in the description to this video, or on a website if you're listening elsewhere. But thank you for all your support.
Indeed. And now it's time for this week's Railway News Roundup. Alstom's Widnes Technology Centre in Cheshire has welcomed its first ever passenger service. A UK Rail Tours charter traversed the 13,000 square metre site on September 6th, topped and tailed by GB Rail Freight 57303 and 60087 to experience some rare track. Seems the big thing at the minute, doesn't it? The train apparently remained on site for almost an hour to let passengers observe and capture some footage of a facility most people never get to see before heading off for Glanconwy Freight Depot via Llandudno Junction. Now, apparently, Richard, the name of the rail tour, the Industria Ditat, translates from Latin to Industry Enriches, which is the motto of the town of Widnes. I bet you didn't know that. Alstom seems to be doing quite a bit of this at the moment with a charter to the Greatest Gathering and the upcoming Polmadie event.
They are indeed. Thank you for the Latin, by the way. It was very impressive.
Yeah.
Now, this is surprising, but impressive. This is a slightly curious one, Nigel. It was sent to us by John Kirkman. Thanks, John. Apparently, a number of the new Tyne and Weir metro units that we featured on our video recently had to be adapted to ensure that their sliding door steps, the ones that provide level boarding and fill the gap, didn't malfunction under the weight of thousands, literally thousands of runners during the Great North Run. Nexus, which was last weekend, I think. Nexus, who operate the service, and Stadler, who built the trains, have said that the metal plates that were installed were a temporary adjustment and have already been removed. They're not expecting to have to use them. Other times, it was just a precaution to stop the floor flexing under the weight of serious loads, which could have caused the automatic sliding step to stop working. And Stadler apparently are analysing data they collected during the event, which was on September 7th, to determine if any other modifications need to be made to the trains. So, well done for being proactive. Very interesting to see what comes out of that.
I have many questions, but we'll not get into them now.
Right, okay.
British Transport Police has launched a murder investigation following the death of a 16-year-old boy at Seaford Station on the Southern Railway network on September the 10th. Officers were called to the station at around 1700 following reports of a stabbing, and alongside paramedics and the Sussex Police, they attended the scene to find a boy with serious injuries consistent with being stabbed. He tragically died at the scene, and another 16-year-old has apparently been arrested in relation to the incident.
Desperately sad. One can only imagine what the family's going through. Chris Gilbert sent us this one. Now, LNER reported that they've been made aware of a data breach on their systems. They said in their statement that there was, quotes, unauthorized access to files managed by a third-party supplier, which involves customer contact details and some information about previous journeys. There's apparently no bank, no payment card, or password information stolen, so they're saying that customers don't need to be concerned about their personal data. LNER is investigating with a supplier how this happened to ensure that they can beef up their safeguards for the future.
Chris Gilbert also sent us this one, Richard, and I have to say I really rather like it. The UK's last remaining cinema carriage has been restored and has hosted its first screening in 37 years. Hooray for a special Railway 200 celebration. Opened in 1975 by Princess Margaret, the carriage was once part of a travelling exhibition train, celebrating 150 years of the railway. I do remember that. It went on to screen British Rail staff training films until 1988 before becoming a meeting room, Bristol Depot in 1991. In 2019, volunteers had it moved to the Swindon and Cricklade Railway and embarked on a 6-year project to preserve it. And on September 13th and 14th, last weekend, it screened its first British transport films at the railway on a rebuilt 1970s Bell and Howell projector. Now, I just have to pause and imagine that sound. Maybe you can find some, Richard, because it will trigger everybody who ever went to those film shows.
Indeed.
The coach, which seats 25 people, was static, but apparently in the future it could be used on the move. I think this is brilliant, and that's the end of the news roundup for this week. Go to the movies on the move at the Swindon and Cricklade. If you'd like to send us any snippets of news, you can drop us an email at news@greensignals.org. We can't promise to read them all out, but if we read yours, we'll give you a name check.
Indeed. Which means it's time to do the quiz.
Hooray!
Now, last week's question was this. Other than in a station cafe or mess room, where in the past might you also have been able to see a coffee pot on the railway? Oh boy, did we have lots of answers.
Oh, I told you would.
Yeah, well, you're right. Anyway, here are some of the answers that were acceptable. Steam engine with a vertical boiler was known as a coffee pot, but we did need a specific example because we said, where might you have seen it on the railway? So it wasn't just a general thing. So the 2-foot gauge Challoner on the Leighton Buzzard narrow gauge railway, that was okay. There's the engine from Batchworth Quarry that I think is now resident at Beamish. That's known as a coffee pot. So vertical boilers, as long as you gave us a specific example, you were in. A Great Eastern Railway Class Y5 shunting engine, of which I believe number 229 still survives.
That was the classic coffee pot.
That's the coffee pot. Bulliard's Class Q1, weird looking thing. That was also nicknamed a coffee pot, I'm told. This was a very clever answer. There is a kind of repeater signal found on the London Underground, which is known as a coffee pot.
Really?
Signal. Yep.
It's a bit specialist.
It is very specialist. Although the creme de la creme, Nigel, was a if you said a type of auto trailer or auto coach train, coffee pot was actually the colloquial name applied to the locomotive and auto trailer combination that once worked local trains between Cheltenham and Honeybourne. Who knew? Right, well, there you go. We did not accept which many people tried, the Tidmouth, Knapford and Elsbridge Railway, which of course is the island of Sodor and comes out of the Thomas. So I'm sorry, you couldn't have seen those. It's fictional. Come on, nice try. Anyway, the winner randomly chosen from all the correct answers we had was Jonathan Dart. Well done, Jonathan. Congratulations on winning. And send us an email to Green Signals. Oh, sorry, let me try that again. Quiz. So it's been a slow start, Nigel. quiz@greensignals.org, and we will get your mug out to you. So this week's quiz is a bit of a riddle. I've made it a bit harder, but I hope I haven't made it too hard, right? And it's a bit of a riddle. And it's this. My first is in Atlantic. My second is in Prairie. My third is in Mogul. My fourth is in Pacific. And my fifth is in Mikado. I am an English railway station, still open today. But where am I? Okay, so if you think you know the answer to that, then answers please to quiz@greensignals.org by midday, Saturday, September the 20th. We'll put all the correct answers in a hat and we'll select a winner at random to receive a Green Signals quiz winner's mug.
I won't be trying that one, not my brain. You mentioned about the Q1, and they are strange looking things. I remember reading, I think it was a biography of Stania somewhere, and apparently Sir William, they described him as couldn't believe his eyes when he saw it. I think today he'd say was gobsmacked, but they are very... It
is extraordinary, yeah.
They absolutely are. Anyway, this last goods news story was sent in by Rob Jones. BBC Radio 3 is going to be celebrating Railway 200 with an all-day broadcast from aboard LNER's Highland Chieftain from Inverness to London. It's going to be interesting. You can't always get a phone signal. Train Tracks, as it's been called, will be broadcast live on Saturday, the September 27th from 07:30 to 5 o'clock, 1700. Petrock Trelawney will be presenting from the train throughout the day with 5 live programmes also broadcasting from stations en route. It's a great idea. As the train stops on its journey south, musicians and contributors will apparently join for railway-related discussion and to perform. The live broadcasts and onboard updates will be interspersed with a specially curated railway-themed soundtrack, including music inspired by trains, as well as archive recordings of the sounds of locomotives from the 1950s onwards. Sounds like one worth listening to, Richard.
I think so. I think it's a great idea, as you say. Yeah, nice one.
It's an unusual one as well. And sadly, that's all we got time for this week. Doesn't time fly? Thanks so much for watching or listening. Don't forget to give us the usual thumbs up, leave a comment, and if you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel. It really helps us. And if you really want to support us, find out about membership on YouTube or Patreon, for which you get all sorts of members-only goodies. But most importantly, please join us again next week for this show, which will always be free. But for now, it's goodbye from me, and
it's goodbye from me.
See you next week.